All right. Think we're good. Luke, do you want to just double check, make sure we're live on YouTube as well, or anyone?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, we're live. All right, let's roll.
Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining for the Q3 and Q4 2023 Town Hall. We're really excited to have everybody here with us, and we've got a lot to go through. There's been a whole lot going on for the last half of the year for 2023, so let's get started. Perfect. Khori, do you want to get us started here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Sadaf. And GM and welcome. I'm Khori, the ED here at ENS Labs, and it's our pleasure to join this town hall to share what's been happening at ENS Labs the last few quarters. So Labs is operating at a very different scale from where we were just a year and a half ago. And next slide. At that time, we essentially had a dev team and a governance and support team. Next slide. And since then, we've expanded our capacity to further the ENS protocol, adding functions in product and design, developer relations, marketing, business development, and legal. So as Web3 and the internet moves forward, we believe that a well-established identity will be key to broader user adoption. And so we have to prepare for that future. So the upgrades that you've seen in the app and the protocol represent a shift to sort of prioritize the end user and enhance the end user's experience. You'll hear from our new head of product, Eskender, and he'll share where we are and where we're going with regard to product development here at ENS Labs. In our design lead, Dom, we'll review some of the enhancements to the user experience in the app. The leadership of this team is critical in preparing us for the masses of users that are sure to come in the years ahead. Now, ENS was founded over 6 years ago, and so much has happened in crypto, Web3, and DAOs since the founding. And the team continued to push out updates to the protocol to meet the needs of the changing landscape. We'll hear from Nick Johnson, our founder, and Greg, who will share some of the recent updates to the protocol. Now, one of the keys to our success is having great developers and great developer teams building modern products and services using ENS. And we'll hear from Greg again and from Luke on updates to developer tooling. So our goal is to make sure that ENS delivers a solid developer experience accessible to devs around the world. Now, our new internal marketing department got off the ground these last 2 quarters, and we're seeing greater consistency in activity and a greater variety and creativity in our marketing efforts. So our marketing lead, Sadaf, will share our recent efforts and results and provide a glimpse into what's coming in 2024. As all of you know, over the years, ENS has grown organically through the efforts of the community, the core team, and other passionate friends in the ecosystem. But now we have a dedicated resource to focus on strategic business development who's joined the team. And Marta will discuss our goals, our approach, and if we're lucky, she might share some alpha. She might. I'm not sure. We'll see. Now, lastly, friends, you've noticed that we've had some legal challenges over the last couple of years, and it made sense to add full-time legal counsel to the team. And so we'll officially introduce our new GC and CISO, Alex Orbelis. So with that, we're looking forward to sharing the latest and greatest from ENS Labs with you. And back to Sadaf.
Thanks so much, Khori. That was really lovely. Thanks for getting us kicked off here. I think we can transition to the next slide here. And we will start with product. Over to you, Eskender.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eskender Abibi, and I'm the head of product and strategy here at ENS Labs. We can go to the next slide. And I'm going to be briefly taking you through kind of like product from both like the ideology standpoint about how we as labs are thinking about what we're building, and then into some more specifics about what we're looking to achieve in 2024. So some key values and guiding principles for us as a group is leading the Web3 identity conversation. So for us, this is really twofold. Like this means both in how we are approaching and engaging with people in the ecosystem, showing ourselves to be good, excellent actors on behalf of Web3 as we interface and are typically a lot of people's first time in the ecosystem. And then second, in the technology. So making sure that we're always pushing the ENS protocol kind of to its limits to make sure that we're providing the most usability, trust, and security we can for our users. Next, we have serving the ENS DAO and ecosystem with excellence. Oh, sorry, just to the next point. Yep. Serving the ENS DAO and ecosystem with excellence. So here, what this really means for us is, are we looking at how what we're building is influencing the DAO and ecosystem in a positive way? And are we building the things that push these groups collectively forward? So we want to make sure that what we're building is being widely distributed and used, and that comes from this lens. And then finally, building a sustainable organization. So how do we think about how we as an org operate? How do we as a product org operate so that the product team is in tight alignment with protocol development, and we're able to bring the features of the protocol into the manager app as efficiently and effectively as possible. Next slide. So quickly wanted to remind people that we have a published roadmap. So you can follow the QR code there. You can see some of the design there at the top. I'm not going to go through the exact roadmap, but these are high-level deliverables that we've publicly communicated and want to make sure that you're all aware of. So feel free to check it out. There's also a feature request button that'll route you to Canny, which is where we collect feedback from the community. So we want to make sure that you all are able to give us feedback and ideas about what we could be building. Next slide. All right. Now, ENS in 2024. So we have a lot that we're working on now, and there's even more we want to deliver next year. So these are really high level, but you'll see kind of what our focus are. So our primary focus is around our R&D efforts, focus on our L2 rollout. So we recently launched the EVM gateway and have an implementation on Optimism. So this is one of a few stages that will help ENS become multi-chain. So next, we're going to explore updating and decentralizing the front end. So while the protocol is permissionless, the front end has additional work that we could do to make it even more decentralized for users. And we want to stay true to the ethos of providing this type of infrastructure for the community. Next, we want to simplify the ENS integration process, particularly from a B2B point of view. So we get a lot of interesting and amazing inbound business, and Marta is going to go into that more. And one thing we want to do is make sure that it's as simple as possible for businesses to onboard to the ENS ecosystem. Next, we want to talk about looking at ENS native DNS records in the manager app. So how do we both display those on the front end and then solve for a lot of the technical edge cases that these present? And then next, we want to do some research around smart contract wallets and accounts and how those will work for ENS. So this whole time, we've really been in an EOA-centric cryptoverse, and we want to take the time to research what it looks like if smart accounts become the norm. How do we as ENS interact in this new paradigm? And then finally, continuing to open source more of our internal stack. So previously, things like ENS.js, Thorin, EVM Gateway, internal solutions really to solve our problems that can have a huge impact on the ecosystem. And we want to make sure we continue delivering this type of value. So that's it for me. And I think I'll be transitioning it back to you, Sadaf. Thank you.
Thanks for that product summary, Eskender. It's been a really excellent year. A lot of really big tooling coming out. Luke, I think we can transition to the next slide here. So Dom is going to take over from here and tell you a little bit about the design that we've been working on.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dom, the design lead here. Design in our situation includes UX and UI. So I'm just going to recap some of the app updates that happened in the last quarter or two and tease a little something that's coming up. So next slide. One of the major app updates is kind of along a theme here, was primary name setting. Primary names are a pretty fundamental part of how you use your name. And, we found that in certain edge cases, it was fairly complex to set your primary name, particularly if you didn't have an ETH record set, things like that. We overhauled that entire process in the ENS Manager app to be much simpler, to walk users through when they are in those edge cases, and also to save gas on complicated flows. There are situations where you have to do 3, sometimes even 4 transactions to get your name to become your ENS name, depending on who's the manager, owner, ETH record, etc. So we simplified that, we streamlined some of that, and some of those have been combined into a single transaction. So there is gas saving on those edge cases, and new users should have an easier time setting primary names, especially if they're buying off secondary. Next slide. On the same theme as the previous one, sort of doubling down on the most critical parts of ETH names in the manager app, we overhauled the way we think about ownership and managing roles. As we develop more into the name wrapper and into V3 in general, more roles are being created, and roles are also starting to differ depending on the type of name you have. So previously, ownership was sort of buried. So what we did was we overhauled this. We did a bunch of user interviews, and then on the back of that, a bunch of user testing, created a new ownership tab in the manager app that now has much clearer ways of understanding and managing your name. So it's much clearer who has control of your name and in what ways. And we also added a little send flow that behaves as a send flow. Before we were calling it send flow, but it was kind of confused. Now we have a send flow that when you use it, you can send a name to another person, and it will transition everything over to them, all of the ownership and all of the records. And you also have the option of resetting the profile. So now it makes it much easier to gift a name you have to friends, family, anyone you like, really. Next slide. And in terms of like raw design, this is coming soon. But we obviously work in the Thorin design system for the manager app. I obviously work in Figma for that, because that's where designers work these days. And in the process, I've created a fairly robust component system that I have been using privately. Very soon, we're going to open this up and publish it to Figma communities. So this should make it easier for people who are using Thorin in the front end to start using it in Figma as well. There's quite a bit of advanced functionality in this that I've been working on and trying to integrate the newest sort of Figma technology, like variables and things like that. There's also a few new components that have been added to it with the intention of making Thorin a little less ENS Labs centric and a little more Web3 centric to try and add more functionality for everyone. And there's going to be some new surprises in there that I don't want to talk too much about, but you can probably guess on the coming screens. So yeah, that will launch soon alongside the docs, which we'll talk about in a moment. And that's back to you, Sadaf.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, we've got a lot of really fun things in the works from the design team. So thank you so much, Dom. Luke, I think we can move over to the next slide here. Okay, so engineering, this is actually going to be split between both Nick and Greg. So let's start off with Nick.
Hello. So we've been busy in the last year, particularly the last 6 months. If I can have the next slide, please. We've done numerous things, of course, across the stack, but I'm going to focus on 3 main things that are forthcoming rather than already released. The first of these is our efforts on gasless DNSSEC. So we've supported importing non.eth names, so DNS names into ENS for a very long time, almost since day one. And that was done via an integration with DNSSEC, which is the security layer for DNS. What that does is you set a text record and you can prove ownership of that name by submitting proofs of those text records to the Ethereum chain. What happens then is the contract has to verify all of your cryptographic proofs, which can be substantial in terms of gas cost because they use either RSA or they use an ECDSA curve that is not natively supported on Ethereum. And so proving ownership of that and claiming the name can cost hundreds of thousands or even over $1 million gas. One thing that we've been doing to address this, we're calling gasless DNSSEC, and it adopts the innovations we brought with CCIP read and applies them to accessing names that are not on chain. The basic insight is that if we can use CCIP read to fetch data when a resolution is happening, there's actually no need to prove ownership of your name on the chain. Instead, you can simply have the proof fetched and verified at the time the user's trying to resolve the name. So what that means is you'll still have to set the text record and your DNS records, but that's literally it. After that, it will just automatically work. You won't have to send any transactions, you won't have to pay any gas, your ENS name will just start working instantly. And you'll be able to set your ENS records in your DNS manager by setting text records. So deploying this, currently it's on Sepolia, and we're about to deploy a new version with some minor fixes and tweaks that will be, we believe, in parity with what we want to deploy to mainnet. And we're aiming to deploy this to mainnet early in the new year and submit it for the DAO's approval by the January 10th voting window. Upgrading to this will require the DAO's approval after they have taken ownership of the root, which is a voting proposal that's open right now. They'll have to transfer ownership over to the new contract, and then we'll send a series of transactions to upgrade all the existing DNS names to this new system. Next slide, please. The second thing we've been working on that many of you may have heard about is EVM Gateway. And EVM Gateway is a JavaScript or TypeScript tooling that's been built on top of the CCIP read infrastructure. And it's designed to make it much easier to build gateways that target EVM chains, so EVM L2s or even non-L2s such as Polygon and Gnosis chain. It doesn't, in principle, enable anything you couldn't do before, but it makes it about 100 times easier because now, instead of having to write your own gateway, you can simply host one, a standard one, or even if there's already one hosted, and we intend to host gateways for a variety of chains, simply point at that. And along with the JavaScript tooling for the actual gateway, we're also supplying Solidity tooling that makes it easy to query these gateways. So there's now a simple declarative API where you can specify what data you want to fetch from what contract on what L2, and you trigger that via CCIP read, which basically means reverting with that message, and then the client automatically calls you back with the data you asked for fetched from the gateway. What this means is that not just for developing ENS names, but also for any application where you want to fetch data from another network, it's become massively easier to build those sort of bridges and integrations. This is released now. The QR code in the corner will take you to the repository, but we're rapidly working on productionizing it and setting up standard gateways to Optimism, Arbitrum, and a number of other chains. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to talk about our L2 roadmap. All of what I've just been talking about with the gateways is part of building the infrastructure for this, but we're also planning on building out core features for this to be deployed as part of the standard ENS deployment. So first amongst these is better handling of primary names for L2s. Presently, we haven't got a well-defined standard in terms of how L2s should resolve primary names. And so wallets generally resolve the L1 primary name and assume that that is the name you want for your L2. This works okay for externally owned accounts as long as your account is on Ethereum and you're willing to pay some gas to set it up. It doesn't work so well for contract accounts because although it works on L1, different contracts will have different addresses on different chains. So our plan here is to deploy a registry for each chain. So each chain will have its own namespace for primary names. And in conjunction with that, a fallback registry that anyone can set one time with a signature. And that will then be used as a fallback for primary name resolution for externally owned accounts. So if you want to use the same name on every chain, you only need to sign one message and send it to a contract, and it will then work on every chain. On the other hand, if you want it individualized, or if your wallet is a smart wallet, or you want to name a contract, you can simply do that on a per chain basis through our UI. And finally, we're working on demos of how to store ENS records to L2 powered by the EVM gateway and registering subnames. We're aware there are a number of other participants in the ecosystem who are building tech around this, and we view this more as tech demo and developer tooling to show people how it's done and how best to set it up, rather than a competitor with them or an attempt to sort of build an authoritative project around that. And that's all I have for you today. I'll hand it over to Greg, I believe.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide, Luke. Cool. So thanks for the protocol updates, Nick. Always very exciting to see what's going on there. And now I'm going to be talking about a little bit of libraries and stuff kind of on top of the protocol. So first, just a few hours ago, we announced that ENS.js v3 is live. I'm sure you had confetti or something, but very exciting that that is at the door. It's rebuilt from the ground up using VM. So it has strong type safety. It's faster than it was before. There's better documentation. And really the kind of leading star of this is just that it just works, is really the goal for these libraries. In the past, there's been some configuration needed to get things working. And that has been caused some issues for developers in the past. So this version ideally just works when you set it up, should be easy, should be fast, and we're excited to get it in developers' hands. There's going to be QR codes on a bunch of the next slides, so I'm not going to pause each time for them, but feel free to scan those as we go through so you can check it out. But we can go to the next slide. Cool. Another library that's been in progress for a while and out there for a while, which you may have used, is Thorin. So as Dom mentioned earlier, Thorin is our ENS design system. There's the Figma file, like you said, coming soon, and there's also the React component library. These kind of work perfectly together. So if you're using the Thorin React component library, soon you'll be able to match that in Figma with the community file. This version 1 of Thorin will basically be a more stable version, and again, leading towards this process that just works. There's been configuration edits that needed to happen in the past to make Thorin work easily, or to work. And so now the goal is avoid those and make it just work well. This also will come with improved documentation, more components, and just a better overall experience. So we will be shipping that very soon and hoping to put it in people's hands ASAP. And we can go to the next slide. Last thing from the engineering side is this multi-delegate token contract. So this has been in the works for a while, and it is a public good, just like pretty much everything else that comes out of ENS Labs. And it is a smart contract that provides a mechanism for token holders of DAOs to distribute their voting power across multiple delegates. So this means if I own 100 ENS tokens, but I want to spread my voting power across 10 different delegates, I can delegate 10 tokens to each person rather than having to split my tokens amongst wallets, or rather than having to just choose one and send all my voting power to that person. And so we believe this will improve kind of the governance experience in Web3. And we're excited to ship this for ENS DAO first. And anybody else can feel free to use it afterwards. The contracts are in good shape after audits and a bunch of changes. And now we are working on a front end, which you can see a little preview of on the right, to see kind of how that experience would work and how it would feel. But we can go to the next slide and move on to developer relations. I'm just going to continue speaking because I'm doing the first part of developer relations, and then we will also hear from Luke on a few additional projects. So we can go to the next slide. The difference between engineering and DevRel is really just who we're speaking with, right? Engineering is usually core protocol stuff or the core libraries that are built on top of the protocol. And DevRel is really the process on top of that, which gets those products into the hands of developers around the ecosystem. And the biggest way we do that, or at least one of the big ways we do that, is via hackathons. So you can see here a little gallery of our presence at a number of hackathons over the last 6 months. And these are our favorite way to host workshops, collect feedback, help teams build on ENS, and really just bring more people into the ENS developer ecosystem. This is where we get a lot of the feedback on Thorin and ENS.js and just general documentation that leads to the improvements that you just saw in the last few slides. So any hacker who's been to a hackathon or online or in person, or just built on our tools that gave feedback, thank you, because this helps us improve all of our products, basically. And if you want to scan that QR code in the bottom right corner, that's just one example of a workshop that happens at these hackathons. We think it's the best way to onboard new developers to ENS, and we plan to continue doing more of those in the next year. We can go next slide. Cool. Now into some tooling, because we have quite a lot of it. First thing I'll touch on is 2 guides and starter templates to implement ENS or ENS libraries. The first one is a generic ENS starter kit and a full guide on our docs, which will walk you through setting up your first Web3 project, which includes wallet connection and ENS resolution, and basically all of the things that we think you should start a Web3 application with. That is the QR code in the bottom of this slide. And there's also an EVM gateway starter built by the OP Labs team, and that is how you can get started building on the EVM gateway. Again, these are not just for if you're building an ENS specific product, they're for if you're building a Web3 product, because we really believe that any Web3 product or any crypto product in general should implement ENS in some way or another. So we want to provide general tooling for you to do that more easily. You can go to the next slide. Cool. If you want to try DNSSEC or gasless DNSSEC out in the wild today before it's shipped to mainnet and really feel that like weirdly magical experience of just updating a DNS text record and then it like works as an ENS name immediately, you can go to this little testnet lookup site that we've built by scanning this QR code again. And you'll see in that little GIF, I type in gregstrill.com, which I have paid $0 to import onto mainnet Ethereum, or haven't really touched a wallet at all. And it just resolves to an address the same way any normal ENS name would work. And so I know I've talked to a few people who did this for the first time, and it kind of like clicked something in their brain of how cool it was. So I hope you give it a try, and it's equally as exciting for you. We can go next slide. And now I will hand it over to Luke, who is also doing developer relations at ENS Labs.
Sweet. Okay. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Greg. Whoop. Cool. So we've worked on a ton of like random tooling over the last couple months. And just to show off a couple of the highlights, there is the off-chain gateway RS repository, which is live on the ENS Domains GitHub right now. It's a starter template for anybody who wants to get a bit more technical and run their own gateway. The idea here is that for larger projects that are giving out subnames or that are planning on running L2 infra or anything of the sorts, in the event they want to go with a Rust implementation versus a JavaScript or TypeScript implementation, there's this repository available. It comes feature packed with self-service. So there's an endpoint where people can update their own records completely gaslessly. By default, it uses Postgres, but it's completely compatible with other database libraries, and it's fully modular. It has caching and all sorts of other cool stuff. Now, you might sit here and you might go, okay, cool, CCIP names, amazing. But I still need to write a contract and deploy it to mainnet, and it's a bunch of extra steps, and that's where CCIP tools comes in. So the off-chain gateway repository is completely compatible with the CCIP specification. And instead of having to write a contract and then deploy that contract to mainnet, have it set it as your resolver, and then have it revert with off-chain lookup, we built ccip.tools. So ccip.tools is a site where you can use all the CCIP tooling we've built. And in this case, this is the template repository and template contract that you can, with one click, as a lightweight proxy, deploy. So instead of having to spend a month learning about CCIP, writing a smart contract, getting it audited, getting it deployed to mainnet, paying high gas fees, and then finally being able to issue subnames, the process is now just you pay £7, or that's about yesterday's gas prices. It creates a lightweight proxy. It deploys a link to the contract that we've already deployed, and it allows you to specify your own gateway URL and your list of signers. So it's a slightly opinionated approach of CCIP, but it allows people to super easily deploy subnames that are controlled over CCIP. Next up, there's the docs v2 that I want to tease a little bit. We've put a ton of effort into it. It doesn't look like this slide updated, but that's fine. We put a ton of effort into it, and it is going to be out ideally Q1 or Q2 next year. It's completely redesigned from the ground up with all of the fun pathways in mind, all of the different people who would want to find out about ENS, learn about the protocol, anywhere from complete beginner to super in-depth and wanting to build with smart contracts and taking control over resolution. So yeah, hopefully be able to show more of that soon. It is currently available, and if you want to check it out, it's also on GitHub, ENS domain/docsv2. And there's a QR code on the screen as well. If you don't succeed at scanning one of the QR codes, this video is being recorded, this live stream, and you'll be able to go through it backwards afterwards as well. All right, sweet. And I think I'm yielding the floor to Sadaf. Let's go.
Thanks so much, Luke. That was a great update. And everybody that gave us an update from engineering and DevRel. So as some of you guys may know, we have started our own marketing division this year. It actually started partway through Q3. So I'm really grateful to be the first director of marketing for ENS Labs and kind of have that opportunity to showcase what we're doing and really illuminate it, not just for the ENS community, but also far beyond that. Luke, I think we can move over to the next slide, please. So let's start with our coverage report. Oh, I'm sorry, next slide, please. Okay, excellent. So as some of you guys may know, we work with Yap Global. They are our PR team. So for some of the coverage report that we received in Q3 and Q4, we had 12 pieces of published coverage, 390 social media engagements with a view rate of 257K, just shy of 260K, and then an audience of 264 million. We can move over to the next slide. So some of our earned coverage included Blockworks, The Block, CoinDesk, Forecast, and The Rollup, plus many more that you can see on the side there. We'll get a little bit more in depth on the next slide. So some of our long form published, most notably, we had our CoinDesk interview with Nick. This was in regards to the patent dispute. I think you guys will be hearing a little bit more about that later in our town hall. We also had a Blockworks interview, which had roughly 9.3K views. Next slide, please. So some of our published articles and syndications. Khori actually published an article for Forecast. It received about 1K views on the original post, and then it was picked up by Yahoo Finance, and it received an additional 231K views there. We can move over to the next slide. So social media. So this year, I actually took over the social media accounts, mainly in the beginning of Q4 is when we really started making this push to very strategically use our Twitter account for marketing purposes. So you guys can follow us actually at ENS Domains on Twitter, and we can move over to the next slide. So some of the engagement that we've gotten in Q4, mind you, this is Q4 when I took over the account. So our engagement rate is up 18.2%. Next slide, please. Our impressions are up almost 70% on Twitter, which we're very proud of. Next slide. And our follower count has also gone up 1.4K. So our intent with this, as I said, is to really specifically use our Twitter account and other socials that will be coming up for marketing. We're doing this by co-collaborating with our team. We're really proud of all of the work that we've done with, grassroots marketing and everything else that we've done with our community in the past, but we wanted to harness all the capabilities that we have internally as well. Previously, we were working with a company called From the Future, and they were excellent. But it makes sense now that we're really expanding and growing, not only as a team but also externally, that we have someone that can dedicate their time to this fully. And we can move over to the next slide, Luke. So marketing campaigns, a couple of things that we've been working on in Q3 and Q4. We can move over to the next slide. So Q3 campaigns, we started out Q3 by going to ETHCC in Paris. It was ETHCC 6. Luke actually distributed ENS cards there. It was really excellent. We had a great turnout, and we also had our own private event. In July, we had a campaign with Gnosis Pay, which allowed us to kind of expand again into some territories and into communities that we haven't really tapped into before. So this campaign specifically was that they were releasing a credit card that you could use directly with your wallet, and you could actually use your ENS name on there instead of your government name. In August, we had a campaign. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Thank you. So in August, we had a campaign with IRC. We're really, really proud of this one. We're really grateful to be working with a company like IRC. It's International Rescue Committee. They are one of the largest nonprofit charity organizations in the globe. So this was a great opportunity for us to showcase that crypto and ENS and the entire Web3 community can actually be used for humanitarian purposes, and it can be a really, really good value add to humanity. In September, we worked with XMTP, which is a messaging protocol, and we hosted a booth right beside them at NYC, ETH Global, and we were able to create QR codes with them so that the hackers could scan them and have all sorts of little essentials and things like that directly delivered to their stations. And we can move over to the next slide. In Q4, we also had quite a few campaigns. Most notably, we were working with Optimism. ENS EVM Gateway was released in November, as was mentioned earlier. So we partnered up with Optimism on that release, and they were able to create and release an example dApp to showcase EVM Gateway. In December, actually, just last week, we partnered up with D-Gods and Utes for an ENS Builders Barbecue. So this was hosted in Miami during Art Basel. They referred to it as D-Basel, and a couple of people from our team, including Marta and Eskender, were out there. And as you guys probably already saw on Twitter or elsewhere, we recently had an integration with Phantom Wallet. So this is a really great opportunity for us to showcase that not only does ENS work on Ethereum, where is truth of source, but we are multi-chain. So this is a great indicator of exactly that. It is integrated into the ENS Manager app. We did some co-marketing with them on that as well. And we can move over to the next. So a couple of campaigns that I'm really proud to have involvement in. So Phantom.eth was just acquired this week. Very proud of that. 730K followers on their Twitter page, and IRC was actually just acquired this week as well. So that is of the doing from Kevin or validator.eth, as you guys may know him, and that was the ENS Ferry. And we can move over to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about the strategy that we have in place for 2024. I'm personally really excited about this because I get to start a whole new year fresh and be able to strategize things right from the beginning of the year and follow through and have plans for each quarter. We can move over to the next slide. A couple of these strategies that we're going to keep in mind for this. So we want to move over to focusing on mainstream media outlets and tier 1 publications. In the past, we've been very lucky, like I said, to have a lot of grassroots marketing within Web3 and all of our ecosystem partners. But we do want to showcase what we're able to do in mainstream as well. So we have a lot of different connections through Yap and others that we will be utilizing in these coming quarters. So our social media presence primarily has been on Twitter so far. I'm sure you guys have noticed that. We are actually going to be expanding to a lot of other social media platforms in this coming year. So things like Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and others. We also have not done any paid social media advertisement in the last 2+ quarters. So we are going to focus some of our funding on that as well for any big releases or campaigns that we're working on. And we will also have out-of-house advertising, which covers things like billboards, bus stops, and many other things. So we're going to tap into that as well for any campaigns that we might be doing, any events that we might be attending. So you guys will be able to see us out there in the real world. And attending non-crypto specific events. Up until this point, we have mostly focused our energy on attending Ethereum specific events and other crypto related events. We're going to be moving towards some non-crypto events as well. So you'll see us at places like NamesCon and some of the upcoming ICANN events. We're also going to be bringing in a graphic designer and animator. Dom has done an amazing job, even though it's not really his job to do this, but he's done an amazing job putting together graphics and things like that for social media. But moving forward, we do want him to focus on what he does best with UX and UI. So we're going to be bringing in a graphic designer and animator so we can really spice up all of our socials, and you guys will be able to see a lot more exciting stuff going on. and the ENS blog. We're going to be picking up on the ENS blog again. Later in the year, we'll be accepting some blog posts and things like that from contractors or people from the ENS ecosystem or community that might want to contribute. But we're going to start off with all of our internal team putting up blog posts on any engineering things going on, new products released, any partnerships that we have, and anything else that might be interesting to hear about. I think that's the end of my slides. We can move over and I'll introduce Marta. So Marta is our business development, and I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you, Sadaf. Hey guys, I'm Marta. I'm the director of BD here at ENS. I joined about 5 months ago now. It's been a wild ride, definitely. Very exciting stuff happening this past Q3 and Q4. Before we dive in, I just wanted to give you a small disclaimer. As many of you know, in B2B conversations, there are a lot of decision makers involved, and just a lot of moving parts, and most are under NDAs. So I will share as much as I can, but let's get right into it. And to set the stage, I will go on a very high level, just through some industry trends that are relevant to us. Then I'll talk about the questions that guide our BD thesis. And lastly, I'll give you a quick insight into some stats and some overview of selected examples here too. Onto the next slide, please. So what did we see in 2023? And here I really want to highlight just 3 things. The first is the technical improvements that we're seeing with regards to user experience, with account abstraction being at the forefront of these discussions. The scalability space, seeing a lot of new stuff happening as well. And all of this is meant to just lower the barrier of entry to a new wave of users. The second one here is really the comeback of Web 2 brands to the Web 3 space, and we're seeing a lot more interest just around implementing Web 3 strategy within their own broader business strategy with AI and all of these immersive experiences and loyalty. And this time around, it's actually way more intentional than back what we saw in 2021. So it's a lot of exciting things going on in this realm. And the third point here is really financial institutions are integrating Web3 technology into their legacy tech stacks and product offerings. So these are some of the things that really guide sort of our BD thesis that I'm going to show you on the next slide, please. Here we go. So with these trends in mind, let's talk just about our BD thesis, just quickly, our North Star. This is really about answering 3 questions over and over again. This is an iterative process, right? And so what are these? It's essentially the first one, who are our biggest multipliers? The second one is, in which sectors can we grow in most? And the third one and final one is, how do we create the most value? So in terms of who are our biggest multipliers, and in here it's really for us to focus on B2B. So growth comes from enterprise clients integrating ENS and exposing the protocol to their existing user base. And we see this, for instance, with wallet as a service solutions and through integrations. The more integrations we see, the more increased portability we have, and the more drive and the more interest there is from the end user. In terms, next slide, please. Yes, thank you. Yes, you got it. Number 2, in which sectors can we grow the most? And here it's really important to be intentional about it and focus on sectors that are not saturated, but that have an enormous growth potential. And so here it's really about looking into what is there in Web 3 and Web 2.5. So in Web 3, for me and for our BD team, it's really not just about focusing on the transactional use cases for ENS, but really honing in on ENS as a social username, for instance, in communication platforms, on social media, and all of that good stuff. And then for the middle ground between Web 2 and Web 3, Web 2.5, it's really about growing beyond native Web 3 use cases with a focus on e-commerce, entertainment, loyalty, and just naming demands will explode really around gaming and absolute social components too. So it's really, really, really cool to see what's happening. And on to the next slide, please. So how do we create value? We create value by integrating on deeper levels of the tech stack. It's not just about adding ENS support for resolving usernames, but it's using ENS as a fully fledged naming service and as the go-to portable identity solution. On to the next slide, please. Just quickly, the overarching goal here is really establishing ENS as a universal username. And here it's about increasing adoption with new users, increasing active usage by existing users, increasing IRL usage as well, and raising awareness of ENS and our use cases. On to the next slide, please. Before driving into selected examples of partnerships, I want to quickly just share two graphs here. The left one shows you our qualification process, so how we go about the leads that we filter through. The beauty of ENS is that it's a general purpose solution and almost relevant to any industry, and it's open source and permissionless, so anyone can build on it. And having said that, it's crucial to identify which leads are at a stage of integrating ENS through a qualification process in order to really maximize impact. And that's why you see sort of a drop off between prospects, which are right at the top, which is everybody, and then really who gets qualified through the funnel. And on the right-hand side, we can see our lead generation and where all of these connections are coming from. At 34.5%, these are really through referrals. Web3 is the space of friends. And through knowing people, you get to know more people, and that just sort of continues the cycle. At 27.3%, some lead generation is coming from just being on the ground and meeting people during conferences, during events. And one number here that might surprise you is actually the 20% of my lead generations come from LinkedIn, just before Twitter. And the reason for that is really that Fortune 500 companies and all of these senior VP people are hanging out on LinkedIn rather than on Twitter. So that's the reason why Twitter is just shy under 19%. With a lot of interesting conversations, of course, still going on there. But this is sort of how lead generation has been going on these past 2 quarters. If we could move on to, yes. All right. And then now let's talk about some selected examples of what's happened in Q3 and Q4. First, here we have with Yuga Labs Gaming in the gaming space. They are now supporting on their game Legends of the Mara in the Shattered leaderboard ENS names. So wherever you connect your wallet, instead of showing that OX horrible hexadecimal numbers, you will see your cool ENS name displaying. Like Sadaf mentioned, in the payment industry with Gnosis Pay, they're a self-custodial Visa debit card. We also worked on them to display your personal ENS names on their Visa cards instead of your government, issued name. And then we're working with the WOW community, World of Women. They're an NFT project. And for now, what you can access, if you have a WOW, you can access their Patio platform, which is an internal networking platform of sorts. And you can choose to use your ENS name there as well as your identity. Serotonin, they're a marketing agency. They have created their own sort of more curated Web3 oriented LinkedIn experience for Web3 professionals. And on there, once you connect your wallet, you'll be able to use your ENS name as your identity as well. We're also working together with the ENS Labs team. Sadaf mentioned that we hosted an IRL activation with them back in Art Basel. And we're also looking into integrating more and more supportive ENS into their ecosystem, starting out with DID, which is their own networking platform for the ENS Labs ecosystem, and that goes beyond onto other communities too. And we're exploring other products too. In terms of another company in the payment sector, Exgo, they did the DNS to ENS import with exgo.id. So once you create an account on their platform, and it's a neobank type of platform, you are essentially hooked up with a subname. So I'm, for instance, marta.exgo.id. All right, so on to our last slide, actually. Next one, please. So lastly, I wanted to highlight the kind of partners we are talking to, even if these are ongoing conversations and I cannot yet fully disclose more concrete examples here. So maybe we start on the right-hand side here with sports associations. Sports are inherently a social experience. And so the use case here for ENS is a very obvious one. We're talking to two major sports leagues. We're talking to ticketing companies, and particularly here with Token Proof. We are talking to about 4 payment providers, some 5+ fashion brands. We're talking to folks in the digital art realm, and also NFT communities, 5+ projects on there. With hospitality, the thing about hospitality is that after COVID, they've been really looking to sort of revamp their image and develop a stronger bond to customers. So there's a lot of interesting conversations going in that space too. We're continuing conversations with messaging platforms, wallet as a service, introducing an educational component from ENS to universities. So it's very, very excited about this one too, with bringing, ENS to the front row seat of the biggest institutions out there. We're talking to folks out in the entertainment industry. And yeah, in 2024, we're looking to do a lot more IRL activations like the one that we did during D-Basel with Dust Labs. And this actually concludes my presentation. Just on a closing note, this is also sort of the outlook for 2024 for our BD department. It's really, I think we have, some really strong partnerships lined up, and enterprises are just starting to realize the full potential of ENS. So 2024 is going to be a really good year for us. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll give it back to you, Sadaf.
Thank you so much, Marta. Great update. So before we move over to the DAO stewards for an update from them, we are actually going to throw it back over to Khori, who's going to be introducing the newest member of our team, Alex.
All right, thanks so much, Sadaf. So, folks, last year in the summertime, you may remember that we had a little bit of issue with ETH.link, and we engaged a law firm called Crowell to help us sort through that matter. And our lead contact at that law firm was a gentleman named Alex Urbellis. And over the course of the year, kept finding out more about this individual and his background and skills, and ended up coming to the point where we knew we had to have him on board and join the team. But I'll have him talk a little bit about his background. So, Alex, who are you?
I'm great, and it's great to be here. Thank you for introducing me to the community, Khori. It's great. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself just off the cuff here. Nothing prepared, but my background is really grounded in technology, and I've been really a focused cybersecurity attorney for quite a while now. But my interest in technology and cybersecurity and coding and development, really started about 30 years ago when I was a teenage hacker. And I, still consider myself very proud of those roots and still consider myself to be part of that hacker community. I do a lot with 2600 Magazine and Hackers on Planet Earth Conference and DEF CON and all of that. And I think that very much informs the way that I have practiced law and that I approach the practice of law. And I think it's a really great complement to ENS Labs and everything that we have going on here. I've been really lucky and have done a bunch of things in my career that, things that for instance, things that I would have never guessed I would have ever been able to do as, let's say, a 15-year-old hacker hanging out in Manhattan. I wound up working in defense and intelligence. I worked at CIA for a little while and had a top secret clearance with access to sensitive compartmented information, despite my sordid past and things. And I think a lot of what I've done too is really kind of focused around that, where I realized, through these experiences rather, that the world isn't so black and white. There's a lot of gray areas. There's a lot of gradations there. And from there, that led me to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. Was clerking for the chief judge there out of law school, then a big international law firm down in D.C., then over to Oxford, then back to New York. I was also have a background in compliance, and I was first information security counsel for a company called Richemont. I don't know if a lot of people here know who Richemont is. LVMH is the biggest luxury conglomerate in the world. Richemont is the second biggest luxury conglomerate in the world. They own Cartier, Piaget, Montblanc, Chloe, Alaïa, a whole bunch of pretty massive luxury brands. And then I was promoted to the chief compliance officer of that organization and lived over in London, worked in Geneva, New York, London for Richemont, but then was also a builder. And I have a lot of expertise in working in the DNS, was part of ICANN's GTLD expansion program starting really way back in 2010 when the applicant guidebook was being developed. And then I had really worked with a lot of big companies like Google to help with their DNS expansion. And then I actually wound up building and writing every single line of the code myself, a lot of it in Bash and Python, believe it or not, a DNS-based threat intelligence platform. And then that, weirdly enough, led me from the practice of law over to the NFL. Marta was just talking about how important sports teams and gaming is to ENS and the community and our business development efforts. And I'm happy to play a role in all of that too, because I wound up from 2019 through 2020 actually being the CISO at the NFL, the Chief Information Security Officer, so directing all of their worldwide cybersecurity operations. And that's why I'm both very proud to be General Counsel and CISO at ENS Labs, and we're going to hit the ground running in 2024. So
Nice. And in particular, some of your DNS experience has been super helpful to us over the last year. Even though you just joined the team in November, we've been working closely over the last year on domain issues, .eth issues, and in particular this threat actor issue. And I'd like to share with the community that you really helped us protect a ton of ENS users from threat actors. Trying to spoof ENS domains. So you want to share a little bit about our experience taking them down?
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to do so. And I think we'll have some more information coming out about this too, because it is an ongoing effort. But one of the things that we realized is that Web3 is certainly not an island, and the security of Web3 often relies on Web2 infrastructure. Right, things like the DNS and ENS. So sorry, excuse me, guys. Believe it or not, that was Virgil Griffith calling me. And in any event, so Web 2 technologies are really important, and things like the DNS can be used to attack ENS users. And so once we started turning the DNS monitoring and threat intelligence platform that I had developed on to watch for new ENS-related domains, what we found, and also to look at historical registrations there, what we found was a really consistent group of, consistent and persistent. I would actually probably classify these guys as an APT or an advanced persistent threat. And they were registering a whole bunch of impersonation ENS domains that were designed to act as either credential harvesters or to access people's wallets. And they did this in such a way, I don't know if you remember, Khori, but they really were very, very smart. And so they would not only register these domains, but they promoted them through Twitter, now known as X, of course, by hacking into some high-profile accounts and then spreading these links to bogus ENS airdrops or giveaways, things like that, by way of Twitter. And you also have a bit of this misspent youth in your past too, because one of the things that allowed us to identify consistently the domains that belong to this group of threat actors was really kind of funny. GDPR in the EU requires many Web2 DNS registrars to mask a lot of the registrant information, and GDPR, though, just protects people, not necessarily corporations or organizations. So one of the fields that's unmasked and that doesn't have to be masked by any registrar is the business organization or the registrant organization field. And what we saw consistently across all of these DNS records was 1337 Services LLC. And if you have a background in cybersecurity or hacking or anything like that, you'll know that 1337 is a really special term because it's kind of KRAD leet speak for leet, which is short for elite. And elite or elite means you're a hacker with skills. So these guys, when we unmasked the registrant information, had 1337 in all over their bogus registrant information, like their phone number, their address, etc. And they really considered themselves to be lead hackers, but it is ironically the way in which we were able to take all of these down en masse.
Yeah.
And we're continuing to work with others in the Web3 community to help protect them in the Web2 space. So we've shared a lot of information with OpenSea recently. Coincidentally, we started picking up a lot of OpenSea impersonation domains because OpenSea also contains the string ENS in it from OpenSea, OPENS. So we're doing a lot of that and happy to share a lot of this intel with the community to make it all a safer place.
Great, great. Well, welcome to the team, Alex. We are thrilled to have you, have your expertise, your experience. So big welcome.
Thank
All
you
right,
so much. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and the rest of the Labs team, thank you so much for sharing a lot of the great work that you've done. So on behalf of Nick and myself, thank you so much for the hustle and the dedication to pushing this forward. All right, Sadaf, back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. Really happy to have you on the team. I feel like every time I hear about you, I'm more and more impressed. So at this point, we are actually going to bring in the Working Group Stewards. So let's take it over to Catherine to start from Meta Governance.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thanks to the Labs team. This is going to be quite hard to follow on with us, but happy to take the lead here. You'll be hearing from myself and some of the other working group stewards and maybe some builders and folks from the ecosystem as well. So to kick us off, let me just share my screen. Cool. So yes, hello again. Yeah, my name is Catherine. I'm the lead steward of the Meta Governance Working Group here at the ENS DAO. So just as a reminder for folks who aren't as familiar, the Meta Governance Working Group is responsible for providing governance oversight and supporting the management and operations of working groups through DAO tooling and governance initiatives, as well as treasury management for the DAO. So looking thus far, so this is a Q3-Q4 update, but I just wanted to also make this like a good year-end update. So this year, in 2023, we have held around 50 meta governance weekly meetings. That's a lot of meetings, and all of the minutes from the meetings are recorded in the ENS forum, actually. So yeah, it's been quite the year in meta governance, especially in the past 2 quarters. I want to say special thank you for the attendees who come every week, who make it so productive for us. So extra shout out to those who make it weekly. Just as a quick overview, so meta governance is made of 3 stewards. So there's myself, we have Nick, and we have Spence. And at a quick glance, we're going to go into all of this in detail, but we've had 10 EPs just in the last 2 quarters. We now are looking at a fully deployed treasury, so we'll be hearing from the Karpatkey team shortly. And we are currently doing a big governance proposal overhaul, and we're going to hear from Agora shortly as well. So with that, I'm going to kick this off over to Spence, who's going to go into more of the EPs and the proposals for us. So Spence.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. And real quick, one of the panelists, just give me a thumbs up if we can hear clearly. Make sure my audio is good. Anybody? There we go. Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Awesome kickoff. And then everybody from the Labs team that's already spoken. Thank you guys so much. Everything that you've done for the protocol has just been incredible across the last term, last years that we've been doing this. So this has been term 4 for the ENS DAO. This one covered just the Q3 and Q4, the most recent 2 quarters. And what I'm going to talk about just real briefly, and I'm going to go through this quickly, is the voting, right? The proposals that have taken place. A couple of the things that we've changed this term or tried to lean into was the introduction of voting windows, which of course we can't control when proposals come to the DAO, but we've been trying to batch them together, right, into windows to make it easier on the delegates as they come to vote on things. Leads us right in the second bullet there, delegate notifications. We've really worked hard on how can we make sure our delegates are notified of proposals specifically. Been a great Telegram channel that's been set up by Greg internally that automatically gets some of the executable proposals. We post the social stuff there, and I'm going to give everybody the QR code to sign up for that in just a second. But now, yes, the animated guy saying wow on the next bullet. That's what everybody's been staring at. I apologize. But it's very impressive. If you look at what we've done in the last 6 months, Now, we did EPs 4.1 through 4.10, but that's more than just 10 votes. One of those actually was split across 3 votes, that first one in the social box. And then we also have steward elections. So I think we've put 15 votes in front of our delegates across the past 6 months, which is just huge. I'm proud of all the teams and what we've been able to do to get that information to the delegates to really execute on all the things that you see on this list. Voting and proposals are the lifeblood of a DAO, so this stuff is just awesome. 15 is a huge number. I don't think any of us thought at the beginning of this term that that's what we'd be pushing through. Some of the highlights I think most folks know about are the service provider stream selections, which is up right now. Bunch of focus on that. It's really something we're trying to do to turbocharge our investment in the ecosystem. So on the right side here at the bottom, you'll see the executable proposals we put through. Those are mainly Karpatkey permissions, endowment, tranche move, and then of course, putting into action some of the stuff you see on the left side there. So thanks everybody who's been involved in this. I know it's been a whirlwind of votes and trying to get everybody's attention. And that leads me to the next slide, whoever wants to move it forward. And yes, we still have the wow guy on the screen, but this is the QR code for the Telegram channel. Sign up for this, and what you will get is only notifications of executable proposals that hit the chain, and then social proposals that we post. And we'll try to, again, batch those notifications to be really simple, but anybody who needs to keep a good handle on what's going on with voting in the ENS DAO, that's the Telegram channel to link to. I'll pause there. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, Spence. So next up, we are going to hear from Karpatkey. So as I mentioned earlier, we currently are looking at a fully deployed Treasury. This has been a huge undertaking, I think, for both the MetaGov and also the Karpatkey team. It's been a really good example of how DAO can work with a service provider, do the weekly check-ins, have accountability, have the metrics. And so we're kind of looking at, basically exactly a year since Karpatkey started to, and we did the 2 tranches of endowment. And so now we're fully done with that. And I thought it would just be really nice to do like a year-end wrap, look back at the Treasury, how it's involved, and where we are at today. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Santi, I believe you're online and you should be able to share your screen. So I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll share my screen. Let me know if you're seeing. Okay, yeah. So I'll kick it off. Thank you for having us today. The goal of today's presentation is to give you a quick overview of the endowment from the beginning up to today, to tell you what we have been up to and to tell you what's coming up for 2024. So let's kick it off. First of all, a brief timeline. I'm going to summarize this slide, but basically back in November, Karpatkey and Stakehouse Financial were selected as the endowment fund managers. In February, the first tranche of the endowment was funded with 16,000 ETH. In March, we started deploying the capital in different strategies to accrue yield for the endowment. Different things happened over there. And then in September, the second tranche of the endowment was funded with an additional 16,000 ETH. So I'm going to talk about that later. But before moving forward, some highlights from the financial reporting. This is taken care by the Stakehouse Financial team. Some year-to-date metrics. You can find all of this information in the forum, but some highlights for you to know. Year-to-date metrics, operating revenues have been much higher than operating expenses, 27.7 million versus 8.4 million, which is pretty healthy. As of today, the endowment revenues are covering more than 22% of the expenses. We are tracking this metric and trying to grow it upon time. And a very important metric down here, current reserves, taking into account the endowment and also the DAO time log and other places where funds are held now, can cover more than 130 months of runway. This is more than 10 years. And if we only think about stable coins, more than 3 years of runway can be covered by them. So financial metrics for the ENS DAO remain healthy and sustainable. So now to the endowment itself. This is a sneak peek from the web report. Please recall that a web report is published monthly. So these figures are from the end of November, which is the latest report. Total funds were almost $65 million, and capital utilization was 96%. Farming results for the month were almost $155,000, and the APY for the month was 2.9%. This API was affected by the fact that capital utilization was not that high during the entire month, but started lower. And then as we developed capital from the second tranche, it grew. As of the day of this report, 80% is Ether of the entire portfolio, and 20% are stable coins. When thinking about farming funds by protocol, this is a quick overview, a general overview of where funds are deployed. Compound B3 is the top protocol. It has almost 25% between USDC and ETH that is deposited there, accruing yield for the endowment. Then Rocket Pool, Lido, we have DAI on Maker DSR, and then the others. If we go over the ETH bucket, just recall that the endowment is divided into two buckets. One is the USD neutral bucket. So we have stable coins aiming to get yield measured against USD, the dollar. And then we have the ETH neutral bucket, which is aiming to get yield measured in ETH. So taking a look at this particular bucket, 35% is Rocket ETH, 20% is Compound Wrap ETH, and almost 20% is Stake ETH from Lido. And just recall a discussion we had a few months ago in which we committed to getting a maximum exposure to Lido of 20%. So this shows that we are fulfilling that commitment. So some cumulative revenues from the beginning till now. The endowment has experienced significant growth, expanding from the initial value of $25.7 million back in February when we started to reach almost $69 million by the end of November. Most of this growth is explained by the second tranche, but also by the price appreciation of ETH from February to now. But if we take a look at farming results, the endowment has generated more than $800,000 for the ENS DAO. So taking a look at that, as I said, the cumulative revenue is $800,000 for an annual percentage yield of 3.33%. And if we take a look, if we consider the current composition and we project the APR from the last few months, we are projecting an annual revenue for the endowment of $2.16 million. This metric shows that the results are according to the long-term goal, which is making sure the ENS DAO is here for the next 50 years. So that's the way we take the endowment. That's the way we manage the endowment. Some quick comment about a governance dashboard we also presented for the DAO. I don't want to spend too much time here. Feel free to check it out in the forum. There's a link to a Dune dashboard. But we have some interesting metrics to show to the community regarding to the voting situation in the DAO. For instance, you can see that delegation is almost 10% of the entire circulating supply and is trending down, whereas delegates are trending up. This is something good to check it out. And you can see different stuff, such as it takes the 6 top delegates to reach quorum on an on-chain voting proposal. And you can see the changes in the last 30 days on the top delegates in terms of if they have increased their voting power or if they have decreased it and by what amount. So what's coming up for 2024? We are really excited to continue working and actively developing and introducing new features. new permissions to adapt to changing market conditions. We have done this in the past, and we are going to continue doing so. On the tech side, we are developing new infra and integrations to add new features. We have new dashboards in mind that we think are going to help the community. And we are going to focus on streamlining some processes, mainly related to governance, in order to make everyone's lives easier in terms of voting, in terms of auditing code and so on. So here are links of everything I have shared before. And I thank you for your time. Feel free to reach out if you have any question, comment, or feedback. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Santi from Karpatkey. For anyone listening who's interested in following this, Karpatkey comes on the weekly MetaGov calls. They're very open to Q&A. They're also very responsive in the forums. And so for those who are curious, go to the weekly calls. The call time next year will be different. So if you feel very strongly you're in a particular time zone, please petition the new stewards to consider moving the time. Now, for our next section, I'm going to move it over to Agora, who is helping us basically revamp the proposal process. They have prepared like a 1, maybe 2-minute demo. So Yitang, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Great. Hey. Thanks for having us here. We're going to walk through a real quick preview of what's coming up on Agora. As a reminder, Agora has been working with ENS through the MetaGov group for a while now, and one of our missions is to make the proposal process a lot more easy to use and accessible, so that in the long run, anybody can come sort of and navigate this process without too much handholding. So we're just taking on like a quick example here in this quick demo of Karpatkey, a frequent proposer, and sort of how their workflow would potentially improve in this world. We'll highlight 2 major features that are happening. First is that we are creating a single page for any proposer to walk through the entire process. So they go to Agora, they click create a proposal, and now they can create their temp check, create the proposal draft, submit the proposal, update the ENS docs, which will be automatic, all in one place, so that instead of referencing a documentation site and then going to 3-4 different places to create a proposal, which can be confusing and tedious, now everything happens on Agora. The second major thing that you'll notice here is that we're introducing a draft feature. The draft feature is, of course, a part of the ENS proposal creation process. But we're doing something cool with drafts here, which is that once you have published your draft, if you do not meet the proposal threshold to submit a proposal yourself, so for example, your Karpatkey, you need a permission update to change some strategies, but you don't have the actual 100K ENS to propose a executable yourself. You can go all the way to proposing a draft. And then when you are ready to submit the draft, you can actually select a sponsor directly on Agora. So this in this scenario, say we're selecting Nick to help us out here. So we'll go in here and select Nick as a sponsor after we've done all the required stuff. And you'll notice here that it says we don't have the 100K ENS proposal threshold, but that's okay. So we'll request the sponsorship from Nick, and then copy the sponsor link, share it with Nick. And then Nick on his side, as a delegate who does have the required threshold, can go view a already pre-created draft with all the requirements complete. So in a previous world where Nick had to go through the entire process on behalf of Karpatkey, now Karpatkey can do a lot of this work themselves, give them agency, sort of advance their own proposal all the way until they need a button press from Nick. So Nick goes here and verifies that the temperature check has been created, the draft has been shared, they've done the transaction simulations, the ENS docs have been updated, and there's like an easy to read transaction here with comments, decoding, and eventually a possibility of attaching a audit report. Everything looks kosher, and then Nick creates the proposal for Karpatkey, and when that's created, it says a proposal is created by Karpatkey but sponsored by Nick. So this has 2 benefits. One, it puts everything that was in a bunch of different places into one single place, so reduces the difficulty of creating a proposal. And second, it makes creating a proposal a lot more accessible to people who might not have a 100K ENS delegated to them. letting them go all the way to the very last step before they have to ask a delegate for help. So hopefully this will streamline a lot of the proposals coming up in the future. We're just finished up with the design work and entering into engineering now. So look out for updates. If you're interested, we'll be giving regular updates in the MetaGov call on Tuesdays. That's it. Hopefully I didn't exceed too much of my time. Thanks, Catherine, for having us on.
Amazing. Thank you. And yeah, that's honestly about it for the high levels of what we've done in the last 2 quarters and a sneak peek into what is coming next year in MetaGov. Once again, the calls are open every week. If you have thoughts, feedback, things we can do to make your lives easier as voters and delegates, come to the calls and let us know. Now with that, I'm going to pass it over to Slobo or maybe Colton. Sorry, one of you take over.
I think if Colton's ready, might be.
Yeah, I can take it. Let's see if my my screen share will work here. Can you see that screen?
Yep.
All right. So I'm colton.eth. I'm a public good steward. I'm one of 3. The other 2 are Simona Pop and Eduardo Vega. The Public Goods Working Group, we're really concerned with funding projects that improve the broader Web3 and Ethereum community. The Ethereum Ecosystem Working Group, or the Ecosystem Working Group, is really focused on funding projects in the broader, in the Ethereum community. We're focused on everything else that is not ENS. So some of the things that we're looking at this term was continuing our large funding streams while iterating on our smaller grant opportunities, increasing our reach. So we did this really 2 different ways. One of our staple programs is the ENS Small Grants. This is a grant stream that offers frequent and low barriers to funding. Funding amounts are generally below 5 ETH. This is shared with the Ecosystem Work Group, and its lifetime has had over 130 ETH funded with 680 proposals submitted. There's kind of a nice little graphic there. That's kind of the lifetime stats, and that's shared with the ecosystem. In the Public Goods Working Group, we saw quite a few proposals. There was 95 project submissions in our working group alone, and we distributed 24 Ether to those projects. Over 20 projects had won. We had some changes this term. It was a monthly event. This has changed to a quarterly event. So we're no longer giving 1 ETH to 5 winners. Now we have 12 ETH per quarter, and we're awarding those to 10 submissions per round. The first place receives 5 ETH, second 3, third 1, and then the trailing 4 through 10 get 0.2 ETH. The other initiative we have is the large grants. So this program is a continuation from last term. The goal is to really award larger grant streams, anywhere from 12 to 50 USDC. The applicants submit, a right-sized amount for them, and they elect milestones. The milestones are new for this term because we wanted to shift from a retroactive model and assess ongoing work of the grantees. We found that it was really difficult to really assess really just the retroactive model. It just wasn't working. We wanted to have like an ongoing, conversation and continuing discussion with the grantees, and not just, fund and kind of forget. And I think that milestones have been really productive. We've already had one of our grantees report on those. But looking at that program overall, we had 38 submissions. The winners of those were Ethereum Follow Protocol, GasHawk, Rocky, Revoke.cash, DAppNode, MetaGov, and Clav for their EIP 7212 work. It's a really broad group of grantees that we have. I'm actually excited about this cohort because there's varying degrees of technicality. We have research with MetaGov and DAOstar. And then we have, the highly technical, EIP 7212 with Clave. So really, really happy with that. Those 7 winners, could potentially see a combined up to 287K USDC as long as they meet their milestones. So we've committed 287K USDC. If they meet their milestones, they will be eligible for future grants. Aside from this, one of our third initiatives was really expanding our reach. So we looked at funding more hackathons and events. This term, we funded kind of two key events, ETH Rome, which we funded a hackathon, and then also Not DevCon, which we funded that event totally, and then we hosted a panel. Not DevCon took place during DevConnect in Istanbul. It was hosted by ITU Blockchain, and the panel itself was hosted by Eduardo Vega. The panelists we had on board were all of our grantees, which was like really nice to kind of bring everything together in full circle. We had Roscoe from Revoke Cash, Angela from Token Engineering Academy, and Alim from Clav. Eduardo, in the panel, they discussed lessons learned from our grantees, and we also presented a brief overview of our public goods focus. Again, this kind of brought everything full circle, considering everyone on the panel and at that event was people that we had funded. So really happy that went down, and it was a key initiative of ours. So before I close, just kind of want to wrap up the public goods funding as a whole. Over the past 2 years, since November 2021, when the DAO started, we have funded over 500K to projects, which I think is really significant, considering this is a mandate in the ENS DAO Constitution. That funding has gone, through various, programs which go from scholarships to small grants, growth grants, large grants, and then hackathons funding. Limes is going to go ahead and give a wrap up for spending this term from the Public Goods Working Group. That'll be posted on the forum, so please keep your eyes there. And I also want to go ahead and invite everyone to our calls. We host weekly calls in the Public Goods Working Group. Anyone who is curious about public goods, feel free to join. They will resume next month. That QR code on this screen will have, should be the link to the Google Calendar. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Colton. That was great. I guess I'll go next. Does that work for everybody? All right. I'm gonna also try sharing my screen now. So if you can stop sharing, that'd be great. Yeah, I knew I was gonna have some issues here. Do you mind sharing for me, Colton? I'll just drop it in a link. Thank you for your patience. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the ENS Ecosystem Working Group component of this presentation. I'm slobo.eth, and I want to mention the other two stewards, which is 184 and limes.eth. It's important to note that all the work that we do collaboratively, and I could not achieve this presentation or all the things that we accomplished without Limes's and 184 contributions. So next slide. What is the ENS ecosystem all about? It's there to bring developers to ENS, support protocol improvements, and create ecosystem connections. How do we do that? That's the next slide. We do that through several initiatives. So weekly working group calls, rolling grants, small grants, real life events, and hackathons, which we collaboratively do with ENS Labs. So moving on to working group calls. Working group calls is where anyone can join and present their work. And every week we hold those at 12 p.m. Eastern. and we sometimes have over 30 people attend them. We create fun little images for everybody to kind of remember them by. And though this is just a small selection of the calls we had, people seem to like it. And every week there's usually a theme. If you'll notice a lot of water or streaming things, that might be because some of the people's minds have been on all these streams. So with that out of the way, let's move on to the next slide. Rolling grants. We've distributed 160,025 ETH to 11 builders. And it's just been incredible what they've been able to accomplish. From FluidKey to NamesSys to OnThis, which is a shortcut system, to ETH Limo, which supports the decentralized web, to builders like Alex, who created an EVM gateway on Arbitrum that they did in a hackathon, and then we were later able to support them, to 1W3, which released multiple things such as a link builder. And as a kind of shout out, many of these folks on these rolling grants are also up for streaming provider services. So I encourage people to check that out. We've supported ENS Ideas, which is one of those silent projects that a lot of devs use, but a lot of people in the community may not be aware of. They provide API services to make ENS resolution easy, and they process millions of requests a year. Next slide. We also run small grants. This is actually for the entire year rather than just term 4, because I wanted to show that as we experiment with small grants, we get more applicants and more voters. And for round 10 and 11 is where we switch to voter cards instead of using the ENS token. And it's so clear that that change drove, I don't know, that's like a 4x, 5x increase in number of voter participation. And I think it also increased community involvement because more people's votes mattered, where before we were doing token weighted. So any of the large delegates were able to kind of overpower the situation. Here it became a lot more distributed. I believe we're going to continue to experiment with small grants, and they're going to change. And it's been one of the more exciting places to innovate in. We've had 56 winners, and oftentimes we have over 50 applicants every round. Moving on. All right, all these things that we do, they do not come free. And also, we wouldn't be here if we couldn't support the folks doing it. I want to highlight a summary of these numbers, which is 83% of all spending goes to, let's call it hackers or developers. And the way I'm getting that number for those that want to validate me later is I just add up grants, bounties, and hackathons and divide by total. So that just shows that most of the money that flows through the ecosystem working groups end up in the hands of developers or hackathons. And I'm excited to see that go. For those that are really observant, they might note that term 4 has very little hackathon spending. And that's because the way hackathons work is most of the funding is actually pre-committed early in the year. That's why you see a big term 4, but a small, big term 3, but a small term 4. I expect, you know, several $100,000 of spend happening in Q1 of 2024. Next slide. This is additional detail in terms of that most of this spend is USDC with no ENS and a little bit of ETH, all mostly driven by small grants, but thought I would include that as well. Next slide. And though it was just a blip on the previous expense, we also hold in real life events. And this is where community connections happen. I think like a big win was Prem, who's going to be presenting later, met his co-founder Thomas at ETH Denver earlier this year. And I'd like to think that the ecosystem is in part responsible for generating a connection by creating a welcoming environment where builders can meet each other and talk to each other. Furthermore, these events are not just run by, you know, the stewards. We've had HID, who is a grant recipient and consistent participant of the weekly ecosystem, run an event in India that was attended by over 100 people. We had Alex Neto run a really good event in Istanbul this year. I think it's important that we're holding these events everywhere, and even when the stewards themselves aren't able to attend. So lots of pictures, lots of connections. It's important to have fun because you can't have ENS without friends. And then I think I'm on to my last slide. Yep, and I want to highlight Prem, who was an ecosystem fellowship recipient. He's a protocol improver, bug finder, L2 pioneer, and educator. And what I mean by that is he's incredibly helpful to anyone who has questions. He's helped educate me and others. And the things that he does really do improve ENS in many different ways. But instead of speaking more about him, I'm going to give him an opportunity to showcase one or two things that he's done. So Prem, if you're on the call, this is your intro. Take it away, and thank you for being a builder.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank you for that intro. I'm not sure I deserve it, but thank you so much. Appreciate that. And let me see if I can share my slides. Let's see if this works. Hold shift. Zoom US. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay, I just didn't work. Colton, can you load my slides for me, please? Is Coltron still here? I sent him my slides.
Yeah, give me a second. I'm just looking for them, and I will go ahead and. Did you send them? Okay, got them. Standby one. I have to log in. You know what, Prem? I don't have an account. It may not let me.
No.
Because
okay,
it's
this is getting interesting.
Pitch service. Let's see. Give me 1 second. You know, Prem, I will not be able to because I'm not a member of that workspace.
Okay. This is the end of a long presentation, so I think I'm just going to have to wing it, and I'm totally happy to do that. I did have some pretty slides to show, but wanted to just give a little introduction about myself, talk about how I came into the.
I'm so sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Do you want to send them over to Luke, and then he can share them from his screen?
Oh, he has pitch. Great.
Yeah,
let's
perfect.
see. How do I send it to Luke? On the chat, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also have Luke on Telegram. I can probably send it to Luke.
Yeah, send it to him. Yeah, that'd be great.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's coming on Telegram.
Great.
Thanks for your patience, everyone. While we're waiting, I just want to say thank you to everybody that's presented and Prem who will be presenting. It's been a really excellent town hall. It's incredible to hear updates from everyone.
Gotcha. And Prem, just to kind of get ahead of this, if you can make that public, if that workspace is public, that might help Luke, because I don't think he has this proprietary software.
Oh no, my designer said, "Why don't we use Pitch?" And I was like, "I don't know. Google Slides are better," but now I know why. Let's see if I can do that on the fly. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Click on the share button and like that. Let's see. Copy link. Can I copy? Copy link. Let's see. Go back here. Make controls reactions. Let's see. Okay. Oh, there you go. That's probably it. Okay. Okay.
We should just put that big wow meme while we wait. So patience. It'll be worth.
I don't know. It might be one of these technical things that just can't be done. You know, sometimes that happens. You just let's see. Maybe I can do this. All of a sudden, I think I'm seeing something here. Share externally. That sounds good. New link.
His email is in your Telegram inbox, Brian.
Okay, how about I just do it to you again, and then you can forward it on, and we'll see if that works. If not, it'll be interesting. Let's see.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Any luck with that one?
I'm not having luck. I would say maybe just wing it at this point, Brian.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, I'm just so happy to be, working on ENS. I entered the space in 2021 when I first started investigating NFTs and trying to understand exactly what an NFT was. And I quickly realized that naming was missing. So basically everything was being run with smart contracts and IDs. And I thought, wow, there must be a way to be able to have NFTs in an organized way. And I found ENS. I also found the idea of subnames. And then I quickly realized that subnames were going to be NFTs, and that was amazing. And I started working on the Name Wrapper project as an open source development project, and actually contributed a number of ideas, including the idea of having dedicated rental and sales systems for having permanent unruggable subnames. And I also created an upgrade feature for the Name Wrapper in case we need to upgrade in the future. And then I met Thomas in Denver. Thomas, my co-founder, and we co-founded Unruggable. And Unruggable is a independent research and development firm dedicated to scaling ENS through open source development and protocol engineering. And we are currently applying for a ENS stream from a service provider stream from the ENS DAO. And, I'd like to invite everybody, if they want to vote for us. We're really close right now to getting our stream. I think we're at 3/4 of the way there to 1 million votes. And very excited about that. That's going to happen in the next 24 hours. And that will let us just keep moving forward on scaling ENS, including working on L2s. We've built an app for renting subnames that's currently on Optimism Gorelli, and we've actually then experimented with an actual dedicated ENS app chain. And this is just a different way that we possibly could scale ENS. And we're working on a number of things with research and development, including smart accounts. I have an idea called ENS First Smart Account. And an ENS First Smart Account is basically a smart account where the user pretty much just sees their ENS name. They enter their ENS name. It's available. It's maybe ENS subname on an L2. It's available. They click create account, and it just basically creates their wallet. And from the very first moment that they're using Web3, when they're using crypto, they're using their ENS name. And so, so I hope everybody takes a look at our service provider stream application, and look forward to more years of working on ENS on the core protocol and on the big challenge that we all face now, which is scaling and making ENS cheaper and work better. That was my slide free.
Bram, thank you very much. That was great. I dropped a link of your demo in the YouTube chat area, and I'm going to hand it off back to Sadaf. And thank you for building, and thank you for working through the technical challenges that you just faced.
No
Sadaf,
problem. Thank you. Okay.
There's always something, we don't have all the tech down yet, but we'll get there. Guys, I really want to thank everybody for joining us, whether it was through Zoom or you're watching live in YouTube. I definitely want to thank, of course, my team and all of the stewards and Prem and everybody else that joined us to present their projects as well. All of this is recorded. It will all be on YouTube. Feel free to watch it if you came in late. Share it amongst your friends. Let us know what you think. I think that kind of brings us to a close. I believe this is probably one of the longest town halls we've had, which tells me that there's a lot going on. I'm very excited for 2024, and we still have a couple of things up our sleeves before the year comes to a close. So pay attention and keep an eye out for that. There's some really great things going on. Okay, Khori, any closing words, or are we pretty much ready to wrap up?
Yep, I think we're ready to wrap up. So thank you to everyone that joined, ENS Labs team, stewards, and everyone in the ENS ecosystem. and the community out there. We're thankful for your support. We solicit your support and continue to support us and other builders in pushing ENS forward. So thanks to all, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, everyone.